Welcome, everyone, to episode 63 of the RDH Sports Podcast. I'm your host. Joined alongside me is my brother Tanner. How's it hanging, dude, in the sports world?
It is hanging, dude. I mean, I know I said it last time, but we got a lot of sports on right now. It's pretty good. And the NFL is getting real exciting, so we're here to break it down for you.
Absolutely. And, it is a bit painful to see Shohei Ohtani just, arrive in October being an Angels fan. I'm just like, God,
But
watch that.
Did you not expect that?
No, of course I did. That's why he got paid like $700 million or something crazy like that. You know what I mean?
It's pretty good.
But no, I mean, you and I got to see him in person. We got to see Shohei. We got to see him pitch. We got to see him hit. That was a heck of an experience. And then, him going to the Dodgers is crazy. It's just like a hop, skip, and a jump from where he was in Anaheim. But, hey, I'm glad we got to see him. And now we're jumping into football. This is not a baseball podcast. I'm sorry, guys. I know you might have thought it. But if you're not watching on YouTube, you can, if you're on YouTube, you can see everything on the side. You got the games coming up. You got everything. Tanner's on top of this thing. Looks like real high class is all I'm going to say. But for those folks that are listening on Spotify and Apple and other places where you get your podcasts, today we're talking Dallas Cowboys like always, NFL news like always, matchup predictions again, this time NFL style, week 6, I think, right?
Yeah. Right.
And then college football. We're going to hit some college football. So let's start off with the Dallas Cowboys like we always do. Tanner and I both picked them to win against the Steelers. Were we confident? No. Did it come through? Yeah. Came down to the final drive. Dak Prescott, you can say what you want to say. He had 3 turnovers in the game, had a couple more that could have been turnovers, but so much to say about this game. First of all, what do you think of that final drive? And then we can go from there because there's a lot to take apart from this game.
Yeah, there is a lot to take apart, but I mean that final drive, that looked like Tony Romo. You know what I mean? That's what it reminded me of. All these game-winning drives. I mean, yeah, like Dak dug him into a hole, 100%. You can't watch the game, being up that late, and say otherwise, right? So like, he dug that hole, but granted, he kind of got him out of that hole as well. So he was kind of, a double-edged sword in that game. But I think he put it up and he put it all on display in the biggest moment. He went down, he got a touchdown when they needed it. And, towards the end of that game, hopefully started playing better and just, he became the quarterback that you wanted him to be in that game at the end of the game. And that's all you really want. We saw Kirk Cousins do that thing. Same thing against, against Philadelphia Eagles not too long ago. Game-winning drive where they shouldn't have won. You didn't expect them to win that game. Kirk goes down. Puts him in a chance to win and wins it, and that's exactly what Dak does. He goes down and doesn't let his field goal kicker do, the justice for him. He goes down, he needs a touchdown, he gets a touchdown, and that's pretty much the biggest thing about that drive. I think that entire game pretty much came down to that drive. Cowboys should have been leading for a bigger lead for much more of that game, but like you said, with those turnovers and just in enemy, like in the red zone and things like that, just kind of kept the Steelers in the game. So it was mostly a Dallas shoot yourself in the foot, band-aided up and let's get out of here kind of game. But that's pretty much what I saw from it. Definitely a good game for Dak, even though he did have those turnovers. But that big drive at the end, that's the thing I'm looking at. And I think that's just a big confidence builder moving forward. Even if he does have those turnovers in the game, he just comes right back with a shot to Tolbert in the end zone to win the game. So that's going to give you a ton of confidence moving forward.
Yeah, and you need that in crunch time, especially when you're the highest paid quarterback. You gotta go down there and get that drive, and he did, and it ended up on 4th down to Jalen Tolbert. You know what I mean? Jalen Tolbert essentially had, his Dallas Cowboy coming out party this week. I mean, he is for sure the number 2 wide receiver now. I think he surpassed Turpin even, which is insane. But Cooks is on the bench right now with an injury, so we'll see what happens. He's a sneaky waiver wire pickup if you need one. Turpin, if you have a PPR league and you also do return yards in your league, he's a great one to pick up because he'll return usually 1 a game, and right there's 2-3 points. He usually gets a couple receptions, so you're between 5 and 10 usually with Turpin. And then Tolbert now, Jalen Tolbert coming out of nowhere, and they said on the broadcast, the main broadcast, that Dak stayed after a lot with him and worked with him a lot. So that's really interesting to me that Dak stays after and works with Jalen Tolbert after everybody. I would think it would be more. Usually you see your number 1 wideout and your quarterback staying after with CD, right? You would kind of think it would be CD, but maybe he did do that. And, They just didn't say that on the broadcast, but still, exactly like you said, comes down to the last drive. You kind of knew it was going to be like that. Whoever had the ball last was going to win the game. I know Pittsburgh had like 20 seconds left, but I mean, all they had to do was stop them on fourth down. And like you said, Dallas even shot themselves in the foot on that drive too, with a couple calls that they absolutely did. The big thing I take away from that game is that Tyler Guyton continues to get beat a little bit. Yeah. That's unfortunate, when you have a left tackle and you get picked high, or not picked high, in the 20s in the first round. But yeah, but still, it's a first round pick. And, he's a big boy. You see the size on him, and I think coaching, and also Dallas fans are fortunately got Tyrone Smith right out of USC, and that dude was a plug-in starter for a decade and never went downhill at all. So it's kind of why you're seeing the left side getting beat a little bit. Cooper Beebe's playing pretty well. Zach Martin got into a little bit that game too, but Steelers defensive line is a good line, and TJ Watt was in that backfield every single play. Mm-hmm. And you really like to see Dak's internal clock go off, but you almost want to see it go off a little bit more. No one's going to be like Patrick Mahomes because he's 1-1, but man, that quarterback clock that Patrick Mahomes has, and watching that game on Sunday or on Monday Night Football with him against the Saints was unbelievable. Because every time they were almost there, Mahomes got rid of the ball, and unfortunately, Dak kind of holds onto that ball a little bit long. But he's always done that, you know what I mean? Because he does scramble a bit, and he also doesn't have as much help in terms of blocking that he's used to having. I don't really, I had to bring this up on the pod because everybody was asking about it. But you saw another heated exchange with CD, and Dak really didn't say anything at all. You don't really know what was said in that heated exchange moment. But for me, I'm not looking at that as a bad thing. I'm looking at that as CD wants to continue to get the ball. And unfortunately, during that game, he didn't really get the ball. You know what I mean? Like Jalen Tolbert was the guy. CD did get it, but not as much as he wanted to. I mean, it's the same thing as Michael Irvin, same thing as Dez Bryant. You have to give him 10 to 15 targets a game, for CD. And CD can handle that. So going forward, I think you'll see CD going into the offense even more, which is crazy to say because he's already in there so much. But what did you think about the play of CD Lamb, and specifically did you think about the play of Dak Prescott throughout that game?
I think, obviously with Dak, like we hit on it, but like, he had an up and down game, but it didn't really seem like he was going to CD in those moments, kind of to your point. It wasn't, the CD day that we all kind of come to know and love, but I think it's just one of them, Dak's going to distribute the football to the guys that are open, the guys that, who are getting the best, beat on the coverage and things like that. And, just on that day, Mike Tomlin took away CD Lamb. And I think that's not, something I think CD should get super mad at. I get it. He's a competitor, and I get it. He wants to go out there and he wants to make game-changing plays. But, at the end of the day, it's, you're trying to win the game. So, I love CD's competitiveness, and I love his, his fire. He wants to get the ball. He wants to make an impact, but at the end of the day, I thought that Jalen Tolbert stepped up in that number 2 role, and he was, open on a lot of those plays that Dak was throwing to him. And I'm like, that I have no problem with that. You know what I mean? So as long as Dak's getting the ball to the open receiver who's going to make, a good catch in space, I'm really not, that mad about the whole CD thing. I think it's probably being blown a little bit out of proportion, just a little bit, because I know, internally these guys have been playing together for, CD's always been in Dallas, and same as Dak. Like they know each other, and CD knows his role in this offense, and Dak knows it too. It's not like he's purposefully ignoring him, so they're probably going to get just right back on track next week, so it's a 1 week thing. I don't see too much of it. And I think it's a little blown out of proportion, but CD, he wants to make an impact. You gotta love the fiery competitiveness out of him, and I think it's a good sign, even if some may take it as a bad sign towards Dak in their relationship. But hey, he wants to win, and CD knows he can make plays, so I get it when he wants to get the ball.
And last thing about this game, then we're going to move on to NFL news from this past week and upcoming news. Why did the defense play so much better than they've played all season? And it was it wasn't a bunch of backups, but on the defensive line specifically, it was. On the defensive back side, you go in and out with the rookies and injuries that we've had this year as well. On that part, I think the safeties have been really the only consistent position on this defense. And even then, it's the safety play has kind of, I don't want to say fallen off, but it hasn't been as good as it's been in previous seasons. But at the same time, if you have a defensive line that's not getting to the quarterback, then that means those safeties are going to have to jump into coverage, and a strong safety is not necessarily the guy that should be in coverage. You know what I mean? But why? I mean, why did this defense play so much better? You know what I mean? That's the question I got. My thing is, it's easy. You know, I see it every time this happens, and to me, I'm sorry, I'm going to answer the question because they don't start. You know what I mean? Because if they don't play well, they're not going to come back. So they got to ball out. You know what I mean? That's kind of the way I look at it. But what did you see with this defense?
I mean, I thought that they were just on the defensive line. I thought they were getting a lot more, through the tackles a little bit, especially on the interior, and that's kind of where
Definitely.
a lot of that comes from. I thought Monzie Smith played all right. I thought Osa Odigizua had a great game, and I think a lot of these, rotational guys were just starting to come in, make it an impact towards the edge. I think that they got some good pressure on Justin. It wasn't like the craziest thing we've ever seen, but it was a problem for the Pittsburgh Steelers. It was hard for them to block up front, and maybe that's kind of an offensive line of the Steelers kind of issue. But I thought that up front the blocking was subpar, for Pittsburgh, and maybe that's because of the rain delay, kind of all that stuff with the turf, and I don't know, big excuses, but I thought Dallas was defensively pretty good up front, and so I think that kind of helps towards the back end as well. I thought that they were getting to Justin, a decent amount of times. They were pressuring him into throws that didn't look very good, throws that were off balance and stuff that he didn't look quite like Justin Fields, his playmaker ability. So I thought, give a lot of credit to that defensive line, but also give a lot of credit to those linebackers. We keep talking about them every week. Kendricks and Overshown. I thought that they played a fantastic game again. They were sideline to sideline doing what they do. And so I think this defense is going to keep getting better and better and better throughout the season. Just as they get more comfortable in this system, as Eric Kendricks kind of teaches more of these guys, kind of the ropes and stuff like that. And I thought Diggs had a good game. I thought the corners were pretty good. Nothing too crazy from that Pittsburgh offensive passing attack, and George Pickens was basically invisible. I don't know if you want to get into that, but he was basically out of the game entirely.
I mean, it's hard because you look at it and it's like you nailed it kind of right on the head. Justin Fields didn't have that much time, and when he did have time, I mean, you kind of saw similar stuff in Chicago, right? Like that's kind of why he's not there anymore, right? Like you'd have DJ Moore streaking down the field just like wide open, and it's just like the ball's not getting thrown to him. Now, is that on Justin Fields as a passer? Is that on the offensive line? Is that on the play calling? Right? There's so many different ways that you could look at that, but for me, I look at that game as the defense actually stepped up and played like they were supposed to. And, because this team coming in was supposed to be a top 10 defense, and they have not played like that since week 1. And they played pretty dang well. Now, given, I don't know how much stock you put into a Steelers offense with George Pickens as your number 1 wide receiver. Personally, for me, I love the kid. I think he's really good. I've had him every year in fantasy if I can. And Najee Harris is kind of a guy that you see on a decline every now and then. To me, he's not a guy that gets stronger as the game goes on. And you kind of saw that. And it's interesting because I thought Pittsburgh would have kind of exploited Dallas's run defense, because when they did run the ball, not right up the middle, it worked pretty well. And Dallas also ran the ball pretty well, which is interesting. We'll see what happens going forward with that with Rico Dowdle. But no, the big thing I want to say about George Pickens being taken out is you could see he was visibly frustrated. I did go back and watch that game and watch a lot of George Pickens' routes specifically. He was open on quite a bit of them, not going to lie to you. And he just didn't get that ball thrown to him, whether that be, they don't have the chemistry yet, or the fact that there was somebody looming every single time. And if Justin didn't make that right throw, then you could have a problem there. And you know what happens when the Dallas defense gets a turnover, that momentum goes the exact opposite way. But I mean, great call out there, with George Pickens. What do you
I thought it was interesting, though, because I saw that he was kind of being limited on like his reps and stuff like that and how much he was in that game. And I saw a couple routes, obviously we're looking at it back in retrospect, but I saw a couple of routes that almost looked like he was like giving up on the play and stuff like that, that are kind of going around social media. I don't know if you've seen any of that.
I have, and I watched that in real time, and to me, that's another one of those things that's like, is that actually real, or is that the media blowing stuff up? You know what I mean? Because the whole CD, it's the whole CD thing. If you actually look at his lips when he was talking, it didn't seem like he was like screaming at Dak, but hey, I mean, he was, but it was more of like, I'm open and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, we don't need to get into that because we already talked about it. But I don't know. To me, that it's interesting. You kind of fantasy owners, you want to be like, hey, that's a true number one on that team. That's the only number one on that team. Why is he not getting force fed the ball? I have the same question, straight up, because that guy is a number one, most number two on pretty much every other team in the league, and sometimes he's number one on other teams that have a little bit less of a wide receiver core. But I like George Pickens a lot, and if they were limiting his snaps, thank goodness for that. Because that gave us an easier win because that guy's a problem, and Dallas has shown that they can't handle the big premier wide receivers, at points. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. I've seen games where Trayvon Diggs completely shuts down a player, and then I've also seen a game where they get 150 yards on him. You know what I mean? Same thing with Deron Bland. Moving on to NFL news, Vikings and Chiefs stay undefeated. Chiefs, to me, they're passing the ball around everywhere. It was close toward the end of that game, but the fact that they were able to win these games without giving the ball to Kelsey as much as they usually did. Now, this game they did feed Kelsey a little bit more, which is what you like to see, but they still came out on top. And then the Vikings, man, the Jets fired Robert Saleh, by the way, today. I did not see that coming. I don't think a lot of players did. I think the defense kind of was shocked at the same thing, but Vikings and Chiefs staying undefeated. We'll start there. Chiefs, do you see this kind of staying for a while? And Vikings, when is this going to end?
I don't know. It's at this point, like they're knocking off teams that, people preseason would kind of, obviously give the nod to the other team, not the Vikings. So
yeah,
what are they now? 5-0, I think. So
yeah,
sky's the limit. I think every season we see, a team get off to a hot start, but it's going to be how they finish. And that's the big question for this team now is can you be consistent through that bye week, through that midseason, into the playoff or into the latter half of the season, and kind of make a push to win that division, because I know Detroit's not going to slow down anytime soon. And that's going to be, I think, their biggest competition for that division. Obviously, they're 5-0. They got a good head start. So they can drop a couple games, and they still have to play Detroit twice, right? So
and your team that you picked at the beginning of the season, the Packers, Packers, they look good. They look good.
They got to play the Packers one more time. It was a very close game when they did play them. So I think that division is going to be pretty scary. I wouldn't want to play like any of those teams. And Chicago's starting to get their rhythm too. Caleb's starting to go crazy now. So that's going to be scary. They're going to have a lot of tough games coming up. So I don't know when it stops. I'm not going to pick against them because I like with the momentum they got rolling. I like Aaron Jones. I like, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, like Sam Darnold. He's just all he's got to do is throw it out there, and a playmaker is going to go out there and just absolutely, destroy it. And not to mention they got Hawkinson coming back. Hopefully,
I was going to
say, towards middle of the season, and that's going to be a huge boost, not only in passing the ball, but actually down in the trenches. And so hopefully they can get better run blocking and stuff like that too. And Hawkinson's a great two-way player, so I love it. I think the sky's the limit for them. I just want them to consistently go to the back half of the season. I want to see that transition, because I don't know how many times I've seen teams start 8-0 and then not make the playoffs, or barely skim into the playoffs, lose first round. So it's a big concern.
And to hit on that point too, Kansas City, that's not a team that's just going to, just out of nowhere. Like that's a team that's, kind of going for a sleep. You know what I mean? Like these guys are trying to do something that a lot of people haven't done before, and they are 5-0 to start the season. And the thing is they've looked beatable, 100%. Which is interesting. You know what I mean? Like there's no team in the NFL, even the undefeated Vikings, they looked beatable in that Jets game.
Yeah.
Like there's no team in the NFL, in my opinion, that is not just head and shoulders above everybody else like it usually is. Yeah. Even though we have two teams that are 5-0, there's no way that you're not telling me that. I mean, you saw that Bengals and Ravens game. They went into overtime. Mm-hmm. The Bengals, the Ravens, the Bills, the Chiefs, those guys can win. Maybe take the Bengals out because of their record this season, but still, they almost beat.
But you put them in in a head-to-head matchup, like they're a team that is can absolutely contend. So their matchup their record is not indicative of where they are. Same with the Ravens. Like I'd say they're probably one of the best teams, but they're not 5-0.
Yeah, and that's because the Chiefs. You know what I mean? Like it's all these teams. So it's really fun. And at the beginning of the season, I thought that the AFC was a lot better than the NFC. And right now, I'm being proven wrong because the best team that I thought in the NFC, nice, my dog just sneezed. That wasn't me. Round two. For those listeners out on YouTube, you're like, yeah, this guy. No, the Cardinals took down the 49ers. And the 49ers were a team that I picked to be the easy NFC favorite. Now you can debate with me. There's been a ton of injuries on that team, but still, this 49ers team lost to an Arizona Cardinals team that is very young. And, depending on who you kind of believe in, that's a game that they should have won.
They should have.
And they didn't. So the San Francisco 49ers, I mean, to me, where does it put them? To me, they're not that top team. I think we've talked about a couple divisions in the NFC. Last podcast, we talked about, the NFC East with with Washington, and then potentially Dallas and potentially Philly coming out there. We have the NFC South with the Falcons, the Saints, oh my goodness, the Falcons, the Saints. Help me out here.
The Bucks.
The Bucks. Come on.
Oh,
Panthers.
The last one? There you go.
There we go. Panthers. Sorry, I was like, give me one more team. And then, like you mentioned, you have the Vikings, and you have everybody else too. So, and you have Green Bay. Like, the NFC right now looks great, but at the same time, you look at the AFC. We just named those 3 teams that look really, really good too, or 4 teams that look really, really good too. And I'm leaving out some AFC teams. I know I am, but where do you have the 49ers this year, man? Because this is not the team that walked everybody last season. This is not that team.
No, and it's interesting because their defense doesn't look nearly at the same level as it was. I think their defensive line doesn't look good, pretty much.
And they're better. They're better than they were last year. They're better.
And arguably they were better. So it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Maybe it's that whole Super Bowl hangover kind of thing that people get into, but. I mean, the Niners kind of do it every single year and kind of go to at least the NFC Championship game pretty much every single year. So it's hard to say that it's that, because this is a team that's used to success. And so it's hard to say that, they get one glimpse of it in a Super Bowl and just can't repeat it. So it's tough. You really don't want these back-to-back losses with the Rams and the Cardinals, which, like you said, are games, in my opinion, they should have won, especially that Rams game. They should have won that game.
Thank you for hitting that. Thank you for hitting that, because I was going to hit that in a second. So thank you for hitting that. Keep going.
They can't keep doing this. They got to put together drives towards the end of the game. They got to control the ball, and they can't just let Kyler do whatever the heck he wants on offense. I get it. It's a divisional matchup. They are hard, tough matchups that usually go down to the wire, and usually the Niners win them. And maybe this is like the repercussions of their actions from the last however many seasons. Karma's just coming back, but it's a team that you got to win. I would say it's starting to become into panic mode. If you are the Niners, because Christian McCaffrey is not coming back anytime soon. I think Mason has played very well. You got Debo back. George Kittle is. I don't know if he played this last game. If he did,
he did, but he's week to week. Like, George Kittle has one of those injuries that he could play and he couldn't play, and that's unfortunate. And then you have Brandon Ayuk,
who's back.
Still trying to find.
He's back. I thought he played really well in his past game, but that wasn't enough. It doesn't look like the Niners offense of old. It doesn't look like the offense that can go out and score, 35, 40 points a game. And maybe that's Christian McCaffrey. Maybe that's, him not being there. But I thought Mason has played very well in his stead. And, Kyle Shanahan's not a guy to rely on a running back for a good running game. So I think it first comes down to that defense. You got to get that defense going. You got to get it looking like San Francisco again, because it doesn't look like it has been in the past. I mean, if it's like the Steelers. The Steelers, they have this defense, at least through the first part of the season when they were 3-0. They were holding teams to, I don't know how much, like 20 and under and stuff like that. And that was their recipe for success. If you hold a team to 20 and under, you should win. And so that was kind of what their recipe was. And now they're 3-2 because the teams, have gone over 20 and it's been difficult for them. I guess Dallas scored exactly 20 in that match, but your defense has got to step up. I think Fred Warner, I thought he's had a fantastic season so far, but he's had some injuries that has kind of, I think, limited him in certain capacities. So hopefully they can get him back healthy. And then I just need to see more Bosa. That's pretty much the big thing. They paid him a bunch of money. Go out there and do your thing, because that's the heartbeat of that defense is Bosa. So he needs to get out there. He needs to start doing his thing more than he previously was, and just you know that defense needs to get rolling. I think that's the biggest thing moving forward for these for the Niners. And I think Brock Purdy's played pretty well. Like I said, the offense played pretty well. Just making it when it counts, not making those critical errors in late game situations as well.
And another AFC team that I didn't mention earlier that is a team that could be there every single week is the Texans. And Stroud versus Allen is now, I mean, it was last year when he came into the league, when he took it by storm, but it is now must-see TV. Anytime Stroud's on, it's must-see TV. Anytime Allen is on, it's must-see TV. So that was a heck of a game. Just had to give a shout out to that game, even though Josh might have not done the best for me in fantasy this week, or you. But still, the Texans are taking down the Bills, and you have to call them out because the Bills are a team that, like you said, are a top team in the AFC and can go in and pretty much compete with anybody. Last note, as the Giants putting up 29 points on the Seattle Seahawks. Like, I don't know if anybody saw that coming. That's definitely my surprise of the week. I didn't see the Giants beating the Seahawks, first of all, and I really didn't see him putting almost a 30 piece up on them. But Daniel Jones, he was throwing dimes, man. He was throwing dimes. So anything on that Giants game?
They did not have Malik Neighbors in this game.
Yep.
He was not active for this game. He had a concussion. He did sit out. So this is Danny Dimes in full effect right here. We got just laying a 30 burger on the Seattle Seahawks. And I thought it was kind of, to my point earlier, it's defensive line, man. That they got an absolute stout defensive line over there in New York. And it is literally winning them games, like single-handedly. Like they had a blocked, I think, kick that was taken back, but at that time, like I don't even think it mattered. They were like so well in control of that game. It felt like that it just looked like it didn't really even matter to them. So I thought they had the game pretty much in hand. So this is a good win for the Giants. I thought that it won't, if they're able to do what they want to do, like on the ground, I think Devin Singletary was out in this game too. So they had probably their number one wide receiver and running back out, and they still put up 30 basically. So this is not a bad football team at all. Not at all. Daniel Jones is fully healthy, and I guess he's just on a revenge tour. Nothing really changed in that game over the past previous seasons. He's got the guys he likes, and he's diming them up, man. So I like Dable. I've always liked him as a head coach. I thought he's a great evaluator of talent, and so I love that what he's starting to put together over here. And God dang, that D line. I think it's just that really is just how big of an effect it's having on the team.
Yeah, and Kayvon Thibodeau's just playing at an unbelievable pace right now, and all these guys.
He's amazing.
Yeah, all these guys. I mean, Dexter Lawrence. I mean, these guys are just unbelievable. The NFC.
Brian Burns, not to mention.
Oh yeah, Brian Burns that comes over to like, he's a no name, right? Yeah, just kidding. Dude, that's good for NFL news. Let's hit NFL matchup predictions next. And I'm not gonna lie, I don't know if I've ever done this when I've picked these teams because I know we've picked them before. But we've got Thursday night, the 49ers versus the Seattle Seahawks. I'm going Seahawks here. Coming off a loss to the Giants, Geno's ready to go. You know what I mean? Geno's fired up. He's ready to go. DK is going to get his. And, I've watched multiple 49er games. I've watched multiple Seattle games this season. And I think that Seattle's ceiling is higher right now. And I cannot believe I'm saying that. But who do you got this week against the 49ers and the Seahawks?
You got to go Seahawks. They're just right now they're the better team. Obviously, yeah, they did just lose to New York. Like I get it. They're coming off 2 straight losses, which is tough. But I think if they get Kenneth Walker going in this game's over. I think that Kenneth can absolutely take over this game like he has multiple times this season. And I think that it's over. I think that the only thing I'm kind of worried about is that Seattle defense because Detroit was kind of going crazy against that defense not too long ago on Monday night. So that's a big area of concern. But it's going to come down to, like can they stop Seattle or can they stop the Niners on defense or when the Niners are on offense? I'll say that because honestly, I have no doubt in my mind that I think the Seattle's offense is going to get, good to go. I think they're going to be just fine. I think they're going to be able to put up points. Like it's an NFC West divisional matchup. It's going to be a weird one. These teams know each other. Like how many times has Kyle Shanahan seen DK, and Geno Smith and Kenneth Walker? Like it's been a ton, So I think they're still going to be able to get some movement going offensively. But if the Niners defense looks like they had all season, give me Seattle. I think Kenneth is going to go for, I don't know how many, but he's a bat out of hell whenever you let him hit the ball in open space. He's one of the hardest people to tackle in the NFL. And, I can't say the same about really any player on the Niners right now. I think Brock Purdy has played all right, not crazy good, but I mean, Debo, he's been out. Brandon Ayuk hasn't looked like the receiver they wanted. George Kittle's up to expectations, but that's pretty much about it. You know what I mean? It can't just be just George Kittle. You got this absolute arsenal of weapons that you can use, and it just doesn't look like it. So, Seattle, they look good, man. Their defense is getting a lot better every single week, and every single year they keep getting off-season guys that have just improved this. I'm curious to see where Witherspoon lines up in this lineup. See if he's straight on DK. I'm not sure. I could go back and look at some past matchups. I'm just curious to see where he lines up. I'm curious to see where these defenders line up on these Seattle wide receivers who JSN's coming on now, the number 2 receiver. Like they got a lot of things going for them in Seattle, so it makes it hard to pick the Niners. So give me Seattle.
Crazy to think we both picked the Seahawks. I totally thought you were going 49ers there. Sunday morning, another London game, folks. Gross. The Jags, who, that's their second home, Boo. And the Bears. The Bears. What do you got?
I'm going to go Bears. I'm going to go Bears. I like the Bears. I like Jacksonville. Them coming off of a good win. Very, very good win. Offensive win. Something they really needed. Against old, January Joe over there in Indianapolis. He looked fantastic. Joe did. And the Cardinals, the Jaguars looked even better. They couldn't stop anything defensively. But I like Trevor Lawrence finally getting something going during this season to prove that he is, worth the big pay bump that he got this offseason. So I like Caleb, though. I think he's starting to come on. I think like multiple games now with 300 yards passing, a couple touchdowns in there as well. So don't give him a bad defense to go against, because I think he's going to start trying to make you pay a little bit. He's starting to be a little bit more of a threat. This Chicago offensive line, they're starting to learn how to block, and they're giving Caleb finally some time. And he's got one of the best receiving cores in the NFL. So, bad Jacksonville defense against a emerging Chicago offense. I'm probably going to take Chicago, and I like Chicago's defense against Jacksonville's offense. It's just Jacksonville has had one pretty much good week, which was this past week against a pretty good Indy front. But Chicago's a new beast. We'll put it like that. Chicago's got a lot of really good players, especially towards the second and third levels on that defense. So, not to mention they got some good players on that D line too. So it's going to be tough, I'll say, for Jacksonville. I think if Jacksonville gets stuffed, they don't get ETN going, they don't get Tank Bigsby going, it's going to be a long afternoon for the Jacksonville Jaguars, even if they are, Duval, London's team, I guess.
They are literally London's team. So
maybe they get a boost.
To me, it's like they're playing a home game at Tottenham Hotspur, and that's, what, you're going Bears. I do think the Bears are probably going to win this one for the bettors out there. But just to pick against Tanner, I'm going to go Jaguars here because they got the home game. But if you're a bettor, take the Bears and take the over.
It feels like a weird one. Those London matchups can go either way, honestly.
That's what I'm saying. You've seen the Jaguars hoop, and you've seen the Jaguars do absolutely nothing. And I remember it specifically when they had Calvin Ridley. He got one great touchdown and then nothing the rest of the season. He came out in that London game, played real well, and then didn't do a whole lot the rest of the year.
I hate those London games. It's always the Jags, and it's always Jags players in my fantasy lineup where I'm like, well, they played well in London.
Exactly. Christian Kirk may be a starter this week for you. Just kidding. He's got to go against, like you said, the best. Well, no, you were talking about the Niners. Tremaine Johnson.
That's going to be a nasty one too.
God, he's so good.
So good.
I could talk for hours about the Chicago defense. They have so many good weapons, and like you said, the Bears are starting to come on. You can start to see the game speed getting there, and you can start to see the throws come in there. You already saw them in the first week, in the second week, in the third week. I've watched every one of their games. He's just getting rushed on that offensive line. And he has no time. It's kind of like the same thing at USC. Next game, Commanders versus the Ravens. I wouldn't have thought that this would be the game of the week, but in my opinion, this is the game of the week, and it's not even close. I'm going to go Ravens here. I think that Jaden's finally going to not have a game I mean, he didn't have that great of a game last week, but when you are playing at the level that he's playing at right now, there's a difference between good and great quarterbacks. Good quarterbacks every now and then get wins. Great quarterbacks get wins when they're not supposed to. And Jaden has gotten wins when he hasn't been supposed to this season. Washington was not picked this year, aside from some experts that were high on Jaden Daniels, to really not, I'm not going to say not compete in this division because this division's always tough in terms of competitiveness in division matchups. But right now, Jaden's playing at another level, but so is Lamar. And Lamar, these last two games, is the best quarterback in the league right now, and their defense is starting to play like the defense. And oh, by the way, the defensive tackles that the stout Washington defensive line that they had last season is not necessarily still there this season. They did lose some key players. So give me the Ravens, but I think it's going to be close. And this is a game that I'm going to be glued to because this is the Jaden Daniels. What do you got against a guy that is not only playing it at the same level you are, but potentially better, and the only guy in the NFL that might be playing better than Jaden Daniels right now is Lamar Jackson. So who do you got? You got the Commanders, you got the Ravens.
This could be a premier matchup in the NFL for years to come, and many, many Sunday nights for years to come. So this is the first of, I hope, many, many matchups with these two. Hopefully, we could see him in a Super Bowl. It's possible, but we'll see what happens. But I have to go with the Ravens here because I'm just gonna lean on veteran expertise with Lamar because you kind of look through these losses that come from Baltimore, like the Baltimore's losses and stuff, and it's not by these super grindy running teams. It's kind of these teams like with like they put up, I don't know how many points Cincinnati put up against them, like 38 or something like that. And that's a majority of a passing offense, I would say, in Cincinnati. Given the receivers that they do have. Same with the Las Vegas Raiders. I don't think that they have like a super burner down there in the running game. So Devontae Adams, Brock Bowers, like they lost that game. Baltimore did. So it's going to be interesting for me to see if Washington's going to actually be able to get going on the run. On the ground and actually be able to implement their game plan because I think Baltimore has been pretty good at preventing that this season. I mean, go look at the Cowboys game. Like Dallas couldn't do anything. Granted, they can't do anything against anyone, but it's still you got to add that to the resume. So it's kind of like opposite strategies here, and whoever wins out, I think, is going to win big in this matchup. So I got the Ravens. I got them winning by, I think, a couple scores, and that's just, I just don't think the teams match up that well against each other, and chalk it up to a couple rookie woes against a really good defense with Jaden Daniels, and I think that's a Ravens win.
And next matchup, the afternoon matchup, the Cowboys versus the Lions. Who do you got on that one?
Give me Detroit. I think they're pissed, man. I think that they didn't want to lose that game last season. I think they're still thinking about it. Heck knows I am, because Dallas should not have won that game. And I think the Lions are still pissed, and they look really, really good. Now, I mentioned, teams who are really grindy, who can get in the run and kind of establish their own game. That's the Lions. They are probably the best team in the NFL at establishing their game. And so that's what they're going to do all day long, and they're playing in Dallas. Like, that's the big thing, too. They're playing in Dallas. Dallas has not played well at home this season, and I think it's just Jared Goff. He likes to go in there, and he likes to beat the Cowboys in Dallas. I've seen it firsthand a couple times. So I like Detroit in this one. I don't think Dallas is going to be, super down but not out like they were in the Ravens game, but I think it could easily get up to multiple score lead if Dallas doesn't put up a good showing offensively. I don't think that defense is going to do a whole lot of anything, though. And it's going to, if Dallas wins this game, it's going to be, they're scoring in the 30s. And that's pretty much where I think.
Yeah, and it's something that Dallas really hasn't done a whole lot of recently in terms of scoring that high. We can't both pick against the Cowboys, so I'm going to go Cowboys here on this one. I do definitely think the Lions are revenge torn. If, watching Hard Knocks, you almost kind of saw it a little bit. I didn't really watch it, but I watched a lot of the clips that came out of it. The Lions, man, it's a great team, but I'm going to go with, Dallas keeps this momentum going. They actually give the ball to CD a ton, and that's the way you win this game because the Lions, the pass rush is too good, and Aiden Hutchinson's going to be in the backfield pretty much every time, just like Myles Garrett was, just like TJ Watt was. Not saying he's on that level, but he's very close. But I do think Dallas wins it at home, and I think it's a grindy game. I don't think it's going to be a game with a ton of touchdowns. And if it is, then yeah, like you said, it's got to be a 30-piece minimum. And I don't know if Dallas can stay in a game like that. But I'll go Dallas. If you're a bettor, I would definitely not take the over. I would take the under. And if you're going Cowboys win, I would not let everything hold on that, if you can catch my drift. Next game, we have Sunday night. We have the Bengals versus the Giants. Last week, this matchup would have been a lot better. I would have taken the Bengals right off the rip. I'm still going to. But the Giants, I think, are going to make this a very good game. And, Daniel Jones and Sunday Night Football, you've seen some woes, but at the same time, you've seen some success. So we'll see what happens with Daniel Jones. But I do think that the Cincinnati Bengals on Sunday night come out and take this one. And that's good because there's a high probability that a lot of the NFC East teams are going to lose this week with the teams that they're playing.
Yeah, that's true. That is very true. It's hard for me to go the Giants. I mean, Danny Dimes in primetime is not a quarterback I like seeing, just in general. He's had a couple rough showings when the lights are brightest down in down nighttime when the sun goes down. It's Daniel Jones is definitely a daytime kind of quarterback. So I gotta go Cincinnati. Sorry, Giants fans. It's just he doesn't have a good record in primetime, and I'm not picking against Joe Burrow on Sunday Night Football. So
who's got Daniel Jones, a daytime type of quarterback? That is such an insult, but I love it. I've never heard that before. That's good.
You gotta give Joe Burrow his cake and eat it too. You gotta give him his 2 cents. I can't pick against them. It's hard. they're just better in every single way.
And especially last week, to hit on the last point, then we'll move on. Especially last week when they got very, very close to beating Baltimore, and they could have beaten Baltimore. So, yeah, I think we're both going Bengals on that one. Monday night, we are both hoping for a massive Josh Allen show. I know I'm going Bills. I think it's pretty obvious that we're both going to be going Bills here. But hey, the Jets just fired their head coach. You give him a chance in this one? What do you think?
It's tough. Maybe you kind of, depending on the locker room for the Jets, maybe you kind of rally behind that interim head coach. Maybe you rally behind Aaron Rodgers and get the dub. But no, I think it's,
saw that with Vegas.
Yeah, you definitely did. But I saw a stat that came out today that was saying, no team who has fired their head coach mid-season has ever gone on to make the playoffs. I don't know how accurate it is. It was a single day kind of stat, so it could still have a little bit of a wear and tear on it, but that's not a good stat, especially for the New York Jets, who are looking to potentially, hopefully, get into the playoffs this year with Aaron Rodgers. So give me the Bills, man. I just think they're too good of a team. I think Josh Allen knows this team too well. It's a divisional matchup. I think he's going to play just fine. And, it looks like the Jets kind of need a whole lot for them to win these games. I mean, heck, they did win the game, last season, what Aaron supposed to be Aaron Rodgers, his first game with the Jets. That didn't go too well, the 2 plays in, but Jets did win that game. And Josh Allen struggled a little bit towards the middle and end of that game, and they won it on a kickoff return, if you remember. So, or it was a punt return or something like that. But I don't think we're going to get those heroics this time. I think Josh Allen, I think he puts the debaters and the haters to rest and finally has a good game. So
moving on to college football, we've got, the big one we got to talk about is Alabama versus Vandy. Vanderbilt. I am going to go, clearly it's on the internet, but I'm going on record. This is one of the biggest upsets in history. Like, nobody gave Vanderbilt a chance. Mm-hmm. And not only did they not give them a chance, they were heavily favored against, which makes complete sense going into that matchup. But just watching that game, and for some reason I had that one on from the beginning. I don't know why. There were so many other SEC matchups that were going on at that time, but I think it might have been just because it was right after the A&M game, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
I think that's why I had that on. It was on the same channel. Now I figured it out. But Alabama losing to Vanderbilt, that is one of the biggest upsets in history, in my opinion. And just, dude, opens it up for A&M. Opens it up for A&M right now. Opens it up for A&M. But before we jump onto the Aggies and their massive win, Alabama Vanderbilt, what did you think about that game? They struggled everywhere.
Yeah, and it's not even like a question of like where did they struggle? It's a question kind of like, where didn't they? I thought the defense played horrible. I thought that they were just not getting a whole lot of pressure on the quarterback at all. And Vanderbilt kind of did what they wanted to do. I think you got Nick Saban talking about one of the easiest places to play in the SEC is to play against Vanderbilt at home. And, well, that came back to bite him in the butt a little bit, didn't it? I don't think Vanderbilt has ever beaten a top 5 team, and trust me, they showed it. They showed downtown in Tennessee, and
Did you see they brought the goalpost all the way down to like the river? It's like 4 miles away. I was like, nice,
yes,
dude.
That's so cool. Imagine just being, drunk off your ass in Tennessee and in Nashville and just seeing that, and you're like, what in the world is that going on there? So,
a literal goalpost just going down the middle of the street. That is,
yeah.
That's so cool.
I mean, give the credit where credit is due, man. They played Vanderbilt hasn't been good in I don't know how long, so they definitely deserved that win. And I think Alabama. I think Jalen Milroe had a lot of mistakes, especially early on in that game, like that pick six, the turnovers and stuff. So that's not Alabama football. You don't see that really happen to them, and they're kind of dug themselves their own hole that they couldn't get right back out of, because on a day when Vandy's hitting all cylinders, you don't want to make a mistake offensively, because you're going to be left in the dirt, and that's exactly what happened. It looked like Vandy was scoring every single possession. So, and it looked easy. It looked like you had these 3-star recruits almost, coming out and beating these 5-star, guys who are supposed to go to the NFL. So it's just one of those things. I think that, it's a big momentum sport, and I think these college upsets this weekend kind of showed exactly that. And man, it was a fun weekend though. I was glued to the TV pretty much all Saturday long. Like I was waiting on that Saturday night game. I was waiting for Miami to lose, just waiting, sitting there.
Yeah, and especially on College Game Day too, they show up too in Cal, which is really good to see.
Picked a good one.
But
picked a good one.
Yeah, a lot of this week had a lot of great matchups in college football, and another really good matchup was Texas A&M 25 at the time versus number 9 Missouri.
Mm-hmm.
A&M dominated from the first possession. Dominated. They were favorited by 2.5, but that's just because they play at home, and it's probably the best stadium in the country. Whoop. But real quick, because clearly I'm a homer, I went to A&M, if you can't already tell. The degree's up there. I didn't see it coming. I'm not going to lie. I thought A&M could stay in the game with Connor Weigman coming back, however you say it, and the 5-star starting quarterback sitting down. Marcel Reed, he takes A&M when Weigman gets hurt and takes him on and goes on a 4-game win streak, and then all of a sudden they put him. Nope, sorry, this is Weigman's team, and you saw why. And it's that game was every single cylinder they hit on. Zach Moss, stop running like that. Leading the SEC in rushing right now.
I know.
That's sick. Thank you for that, Mr. Zach Moss. But this A&M team, you saw exactly what their ceiling is this past week, because I don't know if any college team is going to compete with anybody that's playing that high of a level. Now, UT also has a ceiling that's pretty dang high, and a lot of these teams that are rated in the top 5 do, as well as top 10. You know what I mean? I'm not saying 5 through 10 is a cakewalk. It's not. They're 5 through 10 for a reason. And Missouri was top 10, and they came into A&M's house and got absolutely destroyed. And like I said, Alabama losing is big, because if A&M goes undefeated, and we'll say they lose against Texas at the end of the year at number 2. Are they not going to get the nod to be a top team in the college football playoff? Because Alabama lost to Vanderbilt.
I mean,
Georgia already lost.
Depends. We got to get to the end. We got to get to the end of the season and see exactly what's in front of them. See how many other losses they get. But I get
100%. 100%. I'm saying if A&M runs the table and barely loses against UT, it's going to be hard to get them out of the college football playoff.
That's fair.
As a 2-loss team.
That is
with one loss in the SEC.
Yeah.
Because believe it or not, I mean, Brad and I were talking about this earlier, but the first year in the SEC with UT, we have a very big, but we have a possibility right now that they could play for the SEC championship.
That would be fun
if the season ended today, because A&M's first in the SEC. We haven't lost yet.
Yeah, and Texas
given
towards the end of the season.
Exactly. Now, depending on if A&M or Texas, because every year that game's practically a toss-up. I mean, and this is saying that A&M beats LSU, right? That's the big one. Number 13 LSU right now. That's a big one, right? A&M historically does not play that well against LSU. think they've only got a couple wins, if I'm not mistaken. But that's the big game. If A&M goes undefeated and goes and plays Texas, who's against at Kyle Field this year, all I'm saying is it opened up an opportunity with that Alabama team losing. So it's very interesting and a very fun time in the SEC, especially when the SEC championship is only away by one game. You know what I mean? Usually you have a team in the SEC. UT's undefeated right now. A&M is not undefeated, but they're undefeated in the SEC. This is insane. You know what I mean? This is insane. This is a end of season finish that could be fantastic. And UT has a ton of hard games coming up. They got the Red River rivalry this weekend against Oklahoma. That's always a hard game, and Oklahoma's ranked. They've only lost one game. So, like we were saying, a lot of good college football on last weekend, and even more good college football on this weekend. Last thing we'll say is Tanner's number 2 team, probably the biggest game of the week, if not the biggest game of the entire year. Number 2, Ohio State versus number 3, Oregon. Come on, man. Come on. What a matchup, dude. What a matchup. That's absolutely must-see TV. Do you have your Buckeyes going in and taking down Oregon, or do you think the Ducks take down the Buckeyes?
I mean, I'm going to go Ohio State. I think they got one of the best rosters in the NCAA. It's just hard to say that they don't. Obviously, they have their a little version of a young freshman who is also doing their thing, just like Alabama's version that they have over there. So kind of, these rookie receivers kind of taking over the NCAA right now, which is fun to see. I love to see it. So I like what Ohio State's been doing these past couple games. It's going to be pretty much their first big test against, a big opponent this year. They really haven't played anyone that's worth a damn. I'll say Oregon, they've looked better and better every single week, but it kind of, it's just they keep these games close, which if you keep the game close with Ohio State and these playmakers, I think it's hard to say that Ohio State won't pull away with it towards the end, because they just have so much talent. Like that, I mean, their receiving core alone is probably NFL caliber. You know what I mean? Like, you go look at it and you're like, dang, these guys will probably be in the NFL and probably in a starting position, later towards their lives. So it's hard to say that, Oregon does have a lot of talent as well. So it's going to be one of those matchups where it's going to be talent against talent, and it's going to be really fun. And I'm not sure where it is. Is this in Oregon? I believe it's in Oregon, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's home or away. But regardless, that's going to be one heck of a game. And whether or not if it's home or away, I'm gonna go Buckeyes as well. I have to agree with you. That receiving core looks so good. Oregon does have a 5-star transfer, Evan Stewart from A&M, that came over and also has some really good players on that side as well as a solid quarterback. But Ohio State, this is the game that's been circled all season. So I'm gonna take Ohio State in this one against the Ducks.
It is in Oregon. It is officially in Oregon's. I mean, I just don't. It's hard for me to go against, the young prodigy with Jeremiah Smith. And I thought Ohio State's rushing game has been really, really fantastic. Those two running backs that they have going down there have just been, sensational. It's like a 1-2 combo. So I don't know, man. It's hard for me to go against, especially with Oregon losing as much as they did this past year. They still look like a good team, don't get me wrong, but I don't know. Dylan Gabriel hasn't looked like the guy, I think you've pretty much wanted to be since Bo Nix has left. He's kind of taken a little bit of time to get going. So, and Ohio State looks like they've just come out the gate pretty much running. So it'll be a big test, though.
And that is all the sports talk we have for this week, folks. We will catch you next week. How's that sound, Dan?
Oh, bye-bye.